We became members of 57th Street Meeting in 1938. So that's been quite a while. At that point, we were newly married graduate students at the University of Chicago. And fortunately, there was a meeting right on campus that when we were looking around, we found. We both grew up as Methodists, who at that time had a strong peace testimony. This was between the two world wars. Our background in growing up prepared us in some ways for being Quakers. But part of our problem was that we were real pacifists. We had both in our senior year in college joined the Fellowship of Reconciliation, which is the interdenominational pacifist society. And so we wanted to belong to a church that was against war, even when there was a war on. And when we found the Friends Meeting just off campus of the University of Chicago and went to our first meeting for worship, we felt so completely at home that at the end of the meeting, we went up to the person who was closing the meeting, because somebody has to cut it off. Nobody starts it, but somebody has to cut it off, and asked, how do we join? Of course, that's from our Methodist background, where the Methodist Church was eager to take in every new family in town. But we got a good Quaker answer, which was, well, you don't need to be in any hurry, and here are some things to read, and won't you come home to dinner? One of the things that was highly characteristic of the University of Chicago, particularly in graduate school, is you had to read and read and read and read and read. And the Friends Meeting had a very good library of Quaker materials. And so we read and read and read and read in that library. And that gave us a kind of a fast start at understanding and committing ourselves. One of the simplest statements is that we believe in that of God in everyone. That is to say, there is a divine spark in each human being that is in direct communication with God, and that therefore we don't need any priests or bishops or other intermediaries, or actually churches, to communicate with the divine, because it's there available directly for every individual. We have no creed, because who are we as human beings to impose language on other human beings when they have direct access themselves? It also means that we do not go in for hierarchical organizations, because everybody is as good as everybody else. Everybody is as able to gain access to God. The decisions in each of our Quaker meetings are made by the whole congregation by a special Quaker process of agreement that is one of our distinctive contributions, I think, to human organizational decision-making. We are, of course, against war, and most Quakers are individually against participating in any war. I was a conscientious objector in World War II, and so that's one of the distinctive characteristics. The Religious Society of Friends certainly grew out of a Christian background. Friends were among the Puritan groups who revolted against the Church of England in the 17th century. And one of the few of that group that is still alive and active, and I think the only one that has continued to be have the peace testimony and it's an individual conscientious objection and so on as a central principle. We're all seekers to find the truth about that, and that we meet together in silence in a process by which we try to exercise effectively the direct possibility of experience with the divine. It's assumed that people who are ready to speak will speak. And when someone in the group has a message that that person feels is pretty likely to be directly from God, then she rises and speaks. If no one speaks, we all appreciate the silence a great deal. And in it we are meditating, and often, in my experience of meetings, we have found that before anyone said a word, many of us were meditating on the same thing. And when that happens, when everybody seems to be gathered up in a common experience, that's sometimes referred to as a gathered meeting. The fact that we are doing it corporately in loving relation to one another as well as to God means that there is, in my experience at least, a much more likelihood of a really profound experience than I can generally have just by myself. When something comes into your mind or spirit that you think might be an important message, you stop and think, do I generally speak too much? And if you realize that you're in danger of speaking too much, you may decide against uttering it at that time. But if you don't speak very often, or if you feel very strongly about what it is that you have to say, then you go ahead and speak. Well, my sept of God is as the creative process in the universe, not as a person, whether an ordinary person or a super person or anything like that, but as a process that is constantly moving toward more creative and better relationships within the universe. And this is commonly known as process theology. And many Quakers find it an appropriate conception of what it is they're engaged in. You will find many friends who think of themselves as universalists. That is, they don't believe Quakerism is the truth, but it's one truth, and that they can appreciate that other people find equally strong truth in other approaches. There are some friends who will refer to themselves as atheists, but who find the religious experience of Friends Meeting so valuable to them that they will participate, and some of them very effectively, in spite of feeling that they really can't believe anything about a God. from the beginning, Quakers have believed deeply in human equality. And so there always has been a role for women that, so far as possible, was made equal to the role for men. And some of the most outstanding members of the Religious Society of Friends, those who have traveled around preaching in many places and who have been the executives of service organizations of Quakers and so on, maybe not quite in as equal numbers with men, but really with equal opportunity so far as we can work it. The same principle of equality is applied in belief to racial equality, to equality of classes, poor and rich, and to equality of people who live in different parts of the world. In a sense, any issue that has to do with the denial of the equality of people is an issue in which Quakers are likely to take an active part in support of the principle of equality. And one of the things that the people in that meeting did that I wish people in this meeting would do more, and that is pick up the young people who start coming, invite them to go to yearly meeting, invite them to go to Friends General Conference gathering, and get them involved in something beyond the local meeting. Because our local meeting is not really representative of very many of the different strands of Quakerism. And if you go to places where you meet people from other Quaker backgrounds, especially when you get into the international field, and you have people from Guatemala and Alaska and Kenya and on and on and on, who not only have different languages, but who have different developments in their understanding of Quakerism. When we joined this meeting, it was the first time we had ever belonged to only one branch of Quakerism. But the meeting itself has incorporated two branches in a way, so that it's interesting. And of course, religion is one of the areas where splitting is one of the commonest experiences. You know, that tends to be true in all human relationships. That it's the ones who agree on big things but disagree on little ones who fight each other the most.
Yeah.